I am Natalie Warren, 34, owner of the Sapphire Luxury Hotels and Elite Catering Company. My brother James and I are very close, having survived our parents' divorce and built a life together. When James got engaged, I happily put down a $65,000 deposit to host his dream wedding at my most exclusive venue. Then, last week, his wedding manager called me with heartbreaking news. If you are watching this, please leave a comment telling me where you are from. Like and subscribe to the channel to follow the wedding disaster that taught me the true meaning of family and self-respect. James and I grew up in a poor neighborhood in Boston. He was only 2 years older than me, but he always took his role as my big brother seriously. I remember him walking me to school every day, holding my hand as we crossed the intersections and making sure other kids didn't bully me. We had a special bond that many people don't experience in their lifetime. However, our childhoods were abruptly changed when our parents divorced. I was 12, James was 14. The separation was fraught with conflict, with late-night arguments and slammed doors. My father, Robert, was a hard-working accountant who rarely had time to eat dinner with the family. My mother, Linda, felt abandoned and eventually sought companionship elsewhere. Neither of us realized the impact the divorce would have on our 2 children. After the divorce was final, my parents entered a Cold War, communicating only when absolutely necessary, using us as messengers. Tell Dad he's a few months behind on his allowance. Or, ask Mom if I can come home an hour early on Sunday. James and I quickly learned to rely on each other instead of our overworked parents. The family's finances became difficult. My mother, a stay-at-home mom, had to go to work with outdated skills. My father moved into a small apartment, seemingly more concerned with his new girlfriend than with paying his bills on time. By the time I was 16, I was working after school at a local diner. James worked as a stocker at a grocery store. We pooled our money to buy food when Mom was short on cash. "It's just us," James would say as we counted coins on our bedroom floor. "No matter what happens, I'm here for you." That promise got us through high school and into the future. When I decided to study hotel management in college, James was my biggest cheerleader. He decided to skip college and instead work in construction, rising from intern to site supervisor at the age of 23. He sent me a portion of his salary each month to help pay for textbooks and living expenses. My career path was not easy, but it was rewarding. I started as a receptionist at a small hotel while I completed my degree. Management noticed my dedication and promoted me to supervisor within a year. By 27, I was the general manager of one of the city's most prestigious hotels. That's when I took my biggest risk, using my savings and a bank loan to buy a historic hotel that was in bankruptcy. Sapphire Grand was beautifully designed but mismanaged. I worked 18 hours a day for 2 years to renovate and rebuild my reputation. James was there for me. He used his connections in the construction industry to help me find reliable contractors at reasonable prices. On weekends, he and his team came to help with small jobs for free. "Consider it an investment in our future," he winked. By the 3rd year, Sapphire Grand was profitable. I used the profits to fund a second branch, then a third. By the time I was 30, I owned 5 luxury hotels and developed Elite Catering, a high-end catering company specializing in weddings and corporate events. Throughout our entrepreneurial journey, James was a constant source of support. He celebrated our milestones and consoled me when we failed. When a pipe burst in Sapphire Boston, costing thousands of dollars, James drove 3 hours overnight to help oversee the repairs. Our parents began to notice our success in different ways. My father suddenly wanted to reconnect, taking us to fancy restaurants and introducing us to business partners. My mother became competitive, comparing her success to our good fortune. Neither acknowledged that their children had succeeded despite their absence, not because of their support. Then Melissa Blake appeared. James met her at a charity golf tournament where my catering company was providing lunch. She was beautiful, stylish, and from a wealthy family with a long history. Her father owned a chain of car dealerships in the Northeast, and her mother was on the board of several prestigious cultural organizations. There was something off about Melissa from the start. She spoke to the catering staff in a playful tone that made me uncomfortable. When James introduced me, she gave me a smirk. "Oh, the little girl who works in hotels? How interesting," and then turned to talk to someone more important. James was completely enamored with her. Within weeks, he was spending all his free time with Melissa, being introduced to her golf club group and going to fancy restaurants where the waiters were cold to him. I noticed a change in James. He started using phrases like, "the right kind of influencer," and he traded in his trusty pickup truck for a luxury SUV he could barely afford. Our weekly dinners became rare, then almost non-existent. When we did meet, Melissa was always there, and she couldn't hide her pessimism. She checked her watch and sighed as we talked about childhoods and memories she couldn't understand or participate in. Melissa and her mother made their disdain for me clear. At James's birthday party, Eleanor asked sarcastic questions about my small business, expressing disappointment when I talked about its size. "Well, anyone can make it in America now," she said with a wry smile. Melissa nodded, saying there was a difference between new money and old families. "It must be tiring being a waitress, with all the complaining and dirty rooms." She shuddered. I tried to explain that as the owner, I rarely cleaned my own rooms. James interrupted. "Natalie has always been a hard worker. Maybe she'll sell the company when she starts a family." The word stung. He knew how passionate I was about my career. I never said I wanted to settle down or sell the company. It was then that I realized he was leaving the brother who understood me better than anyone. Despite the great distance, I still loved James deeply. I told myself that it was just a passionate phase, he was just trying to fit into Melissa's world. Surely the brother who held my hand when crossing the street was still there somewhere. One cold autumn evening, James called with an excited voice. "Melissa agreed to marry me, Nat." His joy was contagious. I was also sincerely happy, although I was still hesitant about my future bride. "That was great. Tell me, how did you propose?" I curled up on the sofa, eager to hear. James told me about the romantic proposal at Blake's family summer home in the Hamptons, complete with a personal chef, a string quartet, and roses strewn across the beach. The 4-carat diamond ring cost nearly half his year's salary. "Sounds great," I said, trying to hide my nervousness. "Have you picked a date yet?" He said Melissa wanted to get married in June, and her mother said the best venues were booked a year in advance, so they had to start planning right away. But there was a problem. The places her mother suggested were either booked or too expensive. "I'm worried about how to please them," James said, his voice strained. I suggested, "Why not the Sapphire Grand? Big ballroom, beautiful garden, family-friendly rates." He was silent. "I wonder if Melissa will like it. Does she want Rosewood or Peninsula?" I pointed out that the Sapphire Grand had just been ranked higher by luxury travel magazines than either of the others. He promised to talk to Melissa. 3 days later, James informed Melissa that she would consider the Sapphire Grand but was concerned about the catering. Her mother knew many famous chefs. I confirmed that our catering company had 2 Michelin chefs, and that they would do everything. The tour of the facility was tense. Melissa and her mother walked around the banquet hall, talking quietly and taking notes. The hotel manager talked about the most luxurious wedding package, and I showed them the bridal suite with a beautiful view of the city. "Not bad," Eleanor said reluctantly. But the color scheme was not to Melissa's liking. She suggested reupholstering the chairs and changing the curtains. I was surprised and said that we could use decorative chair covers instead of reupholstering all 200 chairs, which would be too expensive and unnecessary. Melissa pouted. "Maybe we should continue looking at Rosewood." James looked at me, begging for compromise, and I smiled and offered to show Melissa's Pinterest board for suitable decoration ideas. Melissa then presented her royal wedding wishes: imported flowers, custom lighting, a champagne waterfall, and a 10-tiered wedding cake. My manager secretly estimated the initial cost to be staggering. James paled when he heard the price tag, which exceeded $100,000 even with my discount. I decided to change things up. As a gift to the 2 brothers, I paid a deposit of $65,000. James was stunned. "That's too generous," I can't do that. But Melissa and her mother smiled quickly. We accept, thanks for the help. To me, $65,000 was a lot of money, equivalent to several months' worth of company profits. But I thought it was worth it to support my brother and build a bridge with this new family. Planning began immediately. Melissa hired Victoria Hayes, a well-known wedding planner in town. I thought I would be involved in all the big decisions since I was also a contributor and the venue owner, but I quickly found myself being left out. Melissa invited the catering team to do a trial without telling me. Victoria emailed about the renovations without CCing me. Asked James, who said Melissa was worried about conflicts of interest if I got too involved. I tried to be patient, respecting their process. But things got increasingly difficult due to Melissa and her mother's unreasonable demands. They made my team remove the historic chandelier because it didn't match the wedding colors, asked the kitchen to create 15 trial menus, and scheduled meetings with the venue coordinator. Still, I remained professional, wishing James a successful wedding despite Melissa's bridezilla attitude. My staff was loyal, tired, and worked hard for me. You're a saint, Anthony said after a heated meeting with Eleanor. If she wasn't family, I would have fired her last week. The $65,000 deposit was officially paid 6 months before the wedding. I signed the paperwork, which stated that the amount included the venue rental, basic catering, and hotel rooms for the wedding party. Upgrades and extras would be billed separately. When the wedding was only 3 months away, I didn't see any invitations sent to me. I asked James, he said Melissa was in charge of the guest list, would send them later, and I didn't need them because we were close. A month passed, still nothing. I thought maybe it was a postal error or they thought I didn't need them. But I started to feel worried. My cousin Dana called to thank me for the invitation. The compliments about the lavish invitations and Melissa's handwritten note made me feel disappointed. I didn't receive any invitations or notes. I asked other relatives, everyone had received them. I called James, is there anything you're not telling me? Everyone has received their invitations. He was silent for a long time. I'll ask Melissa and get back to you. No news for 3 days. I texted, need confirmation to go to the wedding, can I bring guests? What color dress matches the wedding party? He answered evasively, still doing the paperwork, we'll let you know soon. At this point, I noticed many other suspicious things. The bridal shower took place last weekend and I was not invited. There were photos on social media of James and Melissa posing for their engagement party in a tropical garden, which I did not know about. I asked the coordinator about the table layout. My name was not on the list. It must be a mistake, I told them. No, Melissa, asked to be removed. I was both surprised and touched. Then there was the family dinner a month ago, the first time my parents had seen each other in years, and the tension was palpable before I could say anything. Melissa muttered something to her mother and then looked at me with disdain. Eleanor was distant when I asked about the wedding details. She talked about the atmosphere and guest standards at the wedding. Weddings are not just celebrations, they are about social status. Melissa nodded. Some people don't understand real class. The words were directed at me, hoteliers are service people, not upper-class people like them. I looked at James for a response, but he avoided it, focusing on his plate. My mother tried to change the subject, praising my generosity with the deposit. Melissa said sarcastically, that's true, but we'll still have to spend a lot of money to get it just right. I felt slapped in the face. My hotel, the pinnacle of my career, was considered bad just because she had never done any manual labor. Eleanor patted me on the shoulder in a condescending tone, thank you for trying to take our idea into account. I replied, the Sapphire Grand is a 5-star hotel, hosting heads of state, celebrities, and high-class weddings. She was silent. James stood up and walked away, Melissa following him, looking pleased. Then I got word from a friend of mine who works at the club where Melissa is a member. She was laughing at me because she thought I was invited to the wedding and sat at the family table when no one wanted me to show up on the big day. A bridesmaid asked why she accepted $65,000 and didn't invite her. Melissa said coldly, "That money is spent. She's rich, she'll forget." I called James to ask him, "Am I invited to your wedding or not?" He sighed, "It's complicated. Melissa and her mother want the guest list to be limited to their own people." I agreed to that. I choked up, "Since when do you care about powerful people? Have you forgotten the childhood saying, just be together?" He said coldly, "People change, Nat. So do I. You should try to change, not live in the past." I sarcastically said, "Is that your voice or Melissa's?" He ended the call. I was heartbroken to realize that the person I used to be so close to was now a stranger. But I still held out hope, always believing that he would return to the brother he once was. I decided to send a heartfelt email, expressing my hurt at being left out of the big day and my commitment to ensuring professional catering and venue services because it was a family affair. In response, James simply replied, politely, "Thank you for your understanding. I'll talk to Melissa about the guests." Days passed without further news. Finally, my phone rang from an unknown number. I was in a meeting, so I stepped outside to answer it. The professional woman announced that it was Victoria Hayes, the wedding planner. She was telling me about the $65,000 deposit I had paid long ago. But that wasn't the problem. Victoria paused before saying, "The family has decided to disinvite you from the wedding. But keep the deposit." It felt like the world stopped. I gripped the wall to steady myself. Victoria said she was being directed by Melissa and her mother. There was also a consensus from Warren, my father. The people involved wanted to keep the money but didn't want me there. I asked, "Why me and not someone else?" Victoria said challengingly, "I'm afraid you'll ruin the atmosphere." Melissa didn't want any family conflict. In addition, since I own the hotel and the catering company, guests will misunderstand and think I'm a waiter instead of a relative. This statement hit me hard. My years of hard work and success were now being treated as an employee by my own family. I asked, "Did James say that?" Victoria was embarrassed, saying she only took orders from the bride. I told Victoria to pass on the message, cancel the wedding. She was surprised, "You're not the bride and groom, you don't have that right." I replied, "I'm the owner of the venue and the catering company. According to the terms of the contract we signed, I have the right to cancel if the event violates the company's core values." Silence on the other end of the phone. "Tell Melissa and James the first need a formal apology and an invitation to the wedding by 5 p.m. today, or I'll cancel the venue and consider all deposits forfeited under the contract," Victoria protested. "I've never been in this situation before." I said sternly, "Neither have I. But I can't accept being excluded from a wedding because I contributed money and being treated like this." By the end of the call, my heart was pounding. Part of me couldn't believe what I'd just done, but the other part knew it was the right thing to do. Immediately, my phone was full of messages and calls from James, Melissa, and their families. The wedding was 10 days away, over 200 guests had confirmed, the flower, photo, and music services had been prepaid. James came to Melissa, her mother, and my parents in the hotel. I asked them to go to a private meeting room, treating this as a business negotiation, no longer a family matter. The meeting room was silent in tension. James was angry, "What are you doing?" I stood up straight, presenting my rights. Melissa's father loudly threatened to sue me for breach of contract. I clearly answered the contract cancellation clause if the event violated ethics or affected the hotel's reputation. Eleanor disdainfully said I was making a scene, saying that keeping money and then firing people was fraud, violating the law. I responded that it was unethical and possibly illegal. Melissa cried, saying they had only edited the guest list. My mother, surprised, asked why I was not invited to my own brother's wedding. James avoided eye contact, silent. I asked them to explain. James stammered, maybe it was just a misunderstanding caused by Victoria. Victoria confirmed that she had followed Melissa and her mother's instructions. Eleanor ignored him, this was a common occurrence at a major event, not a reason to cancel a wedding. I said it was a deliberate decision to exclude me but keep my $65,000. Melissa got angry and said it was a gift without conditions. I argued that a business gift had conditions, based on a signed contract. Howard Blake got on the phone and called a lawyer, threatening legal action. I responded calmly, showing that I had all the evidence of the bride's fraud. My father spoke up for the first time, asking James if he was serious. He looked confused. It's complicated. I said it wasn't complicated. I was either invited and treated like family or there would be no wedding at the Sapphire Grand. Melissa got angry and said there was no way to threaten. I agreed it was a big deal, but I respected my boundaries. Eleanor denied it and said they would find another venue. I smiled coldly, said I would lose my deposit and that finding a replacement venue would be difficult with 10 days' notice during peak wedding season. Howard proposed a compromise. I demanded a formal apology from the wedding team, respect for my family at all events, and recognition of the $65,000 as a gift from my lovely sister in the wedding program. He agreed to the terms. My mother sided with me, calling James' actions disgraceful. James eventually admitted his mistake, apologized to me, and promised not to let things get any worse. I kept my promise to allow the wedding to go ahead under the conditions stated. James met me privately, tears in his eyes. He admitted that he did not know who he had become in the past few months. I encouraged him. It was a great courage to start over, to be true to himself. The wedding day came, nature was beautiful like a dream, the banquet hall was filled with white flowers and candles. I sat in the front row. Eleanor hated me, and Howard showed respect. The ceremony went smoothly until the moment the priest asked, "Who has any reason to object to the marriage?" James looked at me deeply. He said loudly, "I cannot get married like this, not true to myself and family values." The guests were stunned. Melissa was angry. He continued. "Melissa is beautiful and successful, but not the person I want to live with. I tried to perfect myself to fit into her world, and almost lost my sister." There was a light applause. He called off the wedding. Everyone was in chaos. Melissa cried, her mother shouted about lawsuits. Howard was still in control. James took my hand and led me out of the ceremony room, choking up. "I can't believe I did it," he said, laughing and crying. "It was a wake-up call," I replied, "and I'll pay the financial and social price. But I'm proud of you." He admitted that the immense pressure he felt to love Melissa had made him confused, to become a different version of himself in order to be accepted. I asked him what he would do now. He said he would go back to his apartment, go back to work, and start over, ashamed but true to himself. News of James spread quickly, and the Blakes demanded his refund. Some socialites spread bad news, but his true friends stood by him. James and I resumed our Sunday brunch tradition, renewing our brotherhood. Melissa quickly started dating someone new and rich and got engaged. James also found someone new, Sarah, from the city planning department, who was kind and sincere to the staff. He asked me to be his maid of honor for a simple wedding at his new hotel, with only close friends. Melissa came to see me unexpectedly after 6 months, dressed casually and sincerely apologizing for her mistreatment. She returned the $65,000 deposit via check, admitted her mistake in trying to get rid of me but kept the money. Melissa shared that she had gone through therapy, realized her flaws, ended her engagement to someone new, and was working toward a better version of herself. I listened and felt that she was serious about changing. This story teaches us the value of self-respect, knowing when to stand up for ourselves, and setting clear boundaries. I hope my lesson will help many people realize that no one has the right to disregard your worth just because they don't understand. True family is where you are valued for who you are, not for your status or money. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when someone took advantage of you? Share your story in the comments. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more life lessons. Thanks for listening, and remember that your self-worth doesn't depend on someone not appreciating you.